All right, everyone, welcome to the Week 9 Tonto's Demise recap. It's good to be back. It's been about a month or so. I apologize if I scared anybody by my disappearance, my absence. It's really kind of a long story, but basically what happened is, as Detling and Bean and a couple other people will know, that being a Tonto's Demise League champion comes with a pretty fair share of notoriety around the globe, and a lot of people want to, I don't say take advantage of you, but we're looking for uh, handouts, things like that, do favors for people. All of a sudden, once you're famous, I don't know if it's for being a Tonto's Demise champion. I don't know if it's all that it's cracked up to be, but so anyway, about a month ago, I was asked to do an international goodwill tour. Being the three-time champion, they thought that I would be best suited as the most recognizable face of Tonto's Demise, and of course I agreed. And unfortunately, I ended up in Western Africa, in Liberia. Spent about a week or so over there. A lot of people recognized me, a lot of women, and let's just say that, well, first of all, I was clearly living inside some sort of bubble where I was completely unaware of the situation at that time in that area, and said I spent a week and spent several, how should I say this, interludes with women in which, let's just say that bodily fluids were exchanged, and thus, when I tried to come back home, they let me come back, but I was immediately quarantined upon my arrival at JFK. They took me into the hospital, and I was stuck there for about 3 weeks. Fortunately, I'm happy to report that I am Ebola-free, so good on that point, but and I've yet to hear back on any paternity tests. It might be a little bit too early for that, but fingers crossed that those tests are also negative. If I disappear again in another couple weeks, you'll know that things have gone. The shit has hit the fan, and I got a lot of explaining to do to some ladies in Liberia. But anyway, I'm here now. Feels good to be back. I'm not really sure what happened while I was gone. I was able to, fortunately I had my phone, was able to set my lineup for a couple weeks here, and looks like the league kind of has settled into the usual one or two teams all at the top, one or two up at the top, pulling away, and the rest is a big jumbled mess in the middle. As usual, every year it kind of seems to happen. But let's get right into the Week 9 results. How about that? First of all, we had the defending champ, the Rook, going up against Nick Foley and Dynamite, another former champion. And this one was easily decided, quite simply, by quarterback play. Nick Foles went down with an injury in the first half of the Eagles game, I believe. Fortunately, we do have the one-game quarterback injury rule, so Nick Foley picked up all of Mark Sanchez's stats once he came in, which ended up topping, let's see, his pass yards put you up over 300, so you had a bonus there. It ended up being about an extra 30 points on top of the 17 that Nick Foles had. And unfortunately for the Rook, Phillip Rivers, who seemed to have like he was going to have a pretty good matchup against the Miami Dolphins, potentially high-scoring game, didn't turn out that way. As Phillip Rivers ends up with a whopping 8.2 points. He was not injured in this game. He was benched. He threw 3 interceptions, and I believe he had a fumble lost, and thus only 12 completions for 138 yards, and thus the score of 8.2. I don't know how the Rook managed to score as many points as he did in this one. The final score was 173.8 to 138.3 for the Rook. Like I said, I don't know how he managed to even score that many points, because Andre Johnson scored 3, Trent Richardson scored you 3, and you had Chris Sims in the starting lineup who was inactive. I think bye week problems. You didn't have anybody else to plug in. You picked up Tim Wright at tight end, and he scored you a big 0. So between Phillip Rivers, Andre Johnson, Trent Richardson, Chris Sims, and Tim Wright, you got about 15 points. That's not going to do it. Fortunately, Julian Edelman went off, had a kick return touchdown, in addition to a receiving touchdown. Beckham had a pretty good game, a couple long receptions, got him up over 150 yards. 2 more touchdowns for Martavis Bryant. And the St. Louis defense actually turned out a pretty good performance. Excuse me, sorry about that. St. Louis D turned out a pretty good performance against the San Francisco 49ers in San Francisco. Yahoo says 20, I think it was a little bit more than that. And thus you ended up with the 138.3. Back to Nick Foles. With Mark Sanchez, like I said, about 30 more points from him. Got you up to about 47, 48, which was good and necessary because Mike Wallace, 8 points. Pierre Garcon, 4 points. Allen Robinson, 7 points. Carlos Hyde, 1.7. D'Angelo Williams, 2 points. 25 from Gronk, 21 from Graham. Your 2 big guns carried you. And it was the previously mentioned matchup of San Diego and Miami. It ended up being, like I said, Phillip Rivers totally tanked in this game. San Diego did not score a single point. 3 turnovers, couple sacks, just miserable yardage totals all around for the San Diego Chargers, and thus Miami D. Yahoo says 31. Pretty sure it was definitely more than that. So probably over 100, or just around between the Foles Sanchez combo and Miami D. That got you pretty close to 100 points, and then 46 from Gronk and Graham to get you to compensate for those low point totals from your backs and receivers. So it's enough to win this one this week and take the Rook, knock him down to 2-7 in last place. 7 losses means you cannot finish with a winning record, and most likely you are finished for the 2014 season in terms of any hope at the playoffs, and you can probably start planning for your 2015 season and perhaps fitting yourself for the Phillip Rivers jersey and or getting ready to wear the Cleveland Browns pin, because you traded away Eddie Lacy and Antonio Gates, and I really have no answer or explanation for why or how or when or what. But those are the choices you make. You're free to run your team however you'd like, but I think everyone can say that they're happy with a lot of the moves that you've made. But I'll stop bragging on you now. Let's move on. We had Possum Magic going up against the Huber Slayers. Speaking of making trades and shooting yourself in the foot, this one was taken down by Possum Magic, 168 to 153.5. let's see. Huber Slayers, coming off a week where he didn't use Ben Roethlisberger, cost him a win, plugs him in, takes Tom Brady out, and both of them scored. Let's see, Brady on the bench scored 66, Roethlisberger another 6 touchdowns, but only, 67 points this week. I say only, but 67. Pretty good, actually more points than Peyton Manning, who had 63 for Possum. Let's see, LaFell, good game from him. Decent numbers from Vincent Jackson. Le'Veon Bell, another good one. San Francisco, decent game for their defense. Unfortunately, you couldn't get that win at the end. Jonas Gray, not much from him. 3 points. Let's see, 17 rush yards from Sproles, so 1.7. Jordan Reed, the tight end that you traded for, got you 2.7 with only 1 catch in that game. As I mentioned, Detling traded away Alfred Morris earlier in the week, desperate for a tight end, and traded for Jordan Reed, and thus he was forced to put Darren Sproles in the lineup. As I mentioned, Sproles had 1.7, and Alfred Morris went in for 92 yards and 2 touchdowns, I believe, which was a pretty significant difference. And Jordan Reed, if you had actually kept and gone with Owen Daniels, who ended up playing this week, I think he put up about 11 points on your bench. You total up those two. If Morris is in instead of Sproles and Daniels is in over Jordan Reed, it's about a 28-point bump, which would have been enough. You lost by 15, so you would have actually won this one handily if you had not made that desperation trade. But it's easy to say that now. With Owen Daniels, he did have what was obviously a very minor knee surgery last week. Kept him out. Perhaps he didn't know for sure if he was going to be back in time. So you picked him up. So you made the trade for Jordan Reed. Didn't pan out. As for Possum Magic, the guy that actually won this matchup, excuse me. Like I said, 63 points from Peyton Manning. Only 4 from Kelvin Benjamin, 4 from James Jones, 8 from Keenan Allen. Mark Ingram, 100 yards from him and 2 touchdowns. Ronnie Hillman, 2 touchdowns from him. A touchdown for Larry Donnell. Ahmad Bradshaw in the flex got you 11 points. Kansas City D did pretty well against the Jets. So pretty much Possum was carried by his Bronco combo of Peyton Manning and Ronnie Hillman, picking up my scraps with Ronnie Hillman there. Probably a bad move to drop him before so early in the season. But anyway, Mark Ingram comes back from injury. It's still amazing that he's running well, and he actually looks like a pretty good running back right now. 100 yards and 2 touchdowns from him. Can he keep that up without getting hurt? I don't know. History says no, but anything can happen. And with this win, Possum moves up he stays in second place, still chasing the Wolves. He's 7-2, while Huber Slayers falls to 4-5, getting ready. I'm sure he's licking his chops for Calvin Johnson to come back, most likely this week, and try to make a playoff push here. Only a couple weeks to go, but a bunch of teams jumbled here at 4-5, so we'll have to wait and see what happens. Let's move on to the next match. All right, we had the Dub C Hooligans going up against the Detonators. Dub C's been on a pretty hot streak here lately, and that continues this week as he takes down the Detonators 189.95 to 124.35. Let's see. The only player on Monday night was T.Y. Hilton. 16 points from him. Unfortunately, you needed about 80 to get a win from him. Let's see. Dub C got 50 garbage time points from Flacco. 30 completions, over 300 yards from him. Sanders, 10 catches, 150 yards. Deshaun Jackson, who was another questionable trade. Over 100 yards and a touchdown for him. Let's see. I think Lamar Miller got a touchdown. Kelsey got a touchdown. DeMarco Murray, 13 from him. Gostowski, 14 or so from him. The Houston defense, even though they lost, they had 3 interceptions, 4 sacks, a touchdown. So pretty decent numbers from them. I think Yahoo says 22, although I think it was 19, actually. As for Detonators, 45 from Breeze. As predicted, Nostra Bryan, Mike Evans went off this week, 7 catches, 120 yards, 2 touchdowns from him, 31.4 points. Unfortunately, you got, Doug Baldwin for 8. Ben Tate got you 3.3, I should say. McFadden got you 2. Jace Amaro got you 0. Shane Graham got you 4. And once again, the aforementioned San Diego Chargers totally tanked, gave up 37 points, and scored you a big fat 0 in this one. So 2 zeros, a couple single-digit scores. Not going to get it done against Dub C, who's been playing, like I said, playing strong past few weeks, coming along here. Teams keeps putting up good numbers. I think he's now the second, pulled up to being the second highest scoring team in the league, behind the Wolves. And both teams, with the win, Dub C moves up to 5-4, and with the loss, the Detonators drop down to 5-4. Kevin's in 4th, Brian's in 5th. So both of you guys are going to be fighting here for jockeying for position. Hopefully try to get to 7 here and make it to sneak into the playoffs. So we'll see what happens. Next up, we had Huber Slayers, the FC Huber Slayers, FC Bohoric, going up against McCoy's Homeboys, the other Huber brother. And FC Bohoric took this one down 170.4 to 150.8, knocking McCoy's Homeboys down to 2-7, meaning they are pretty much eliminated from playoff contention. And FC is the only team to beat the Wolves this year, and now he's defeated Jay Huber, so he is the only person to defeat both Huber brothers, at least so far this year, and thus the appropriate name change to FC Huber Slayers. We'll see what Detling has to say about that one. But McCoy's Homeboys was actually at a fairly comfortable lead going into Monday night. Unfortunately for him, FC still had Reggie Wayne, Dwayne Allen, and Adam Vinatieri all left to go. So I believe FC was down about 33 points, meaning he needed 11 approximately from each of these guys. Adam Vinatieri practically did this one all by himself. He had 3 40-yard field goals, a 30-yard field goal, 4 point-afters, over 20 points from him, and both Reggie Wayne and Dwayne Allen caught touchdown passes. Let's see. 17 from Wayne, 15 from Allen, which FC had to be sweating this week going into it. Huge bye week problems this week. No Matt Ryan, no Julio Jones, no Jordy Nelson. And as we know, he traded for Alfred Morris. As, like I said, 92 yards and 2 touchdowns from him. 2 touchdowns from Marshawn Lynch. Wakes up for the Andrew Hawkins Cordarrelle Patterson combo, which got you about 9 points. And what's his name? Travaris Cadet got you 6 points in the flex. Tampa Bay's defense, another loss, but they did it. They got a couple interceptions, a couple sacks. Not a horrible score. It was enough, though, to take down McCoy's homeboys, who had to start Derek Carr this week because Tony Romo was inactive with his back injury. 37 points for him. Jordan Matthews, a touchdown, a couple catches. Percy Harvin, 11 catches for 129 yards. Would have been nice for you if he could have gotten a touchdown or 2, but that didn't happen. Let's see. Not much from Miles Austin or Chris Ivory. Over 100 yards from McCoy. Only 6 points from Greg Olsen. About 20 from Arian Foster, who might be injured now. I'm not sure. I have to check into that, but just a couple points from your kicker, and Cincinnati Bengals defense got a safety, a block kick, a couple turnover. Even though they gave up a lot of points to the Jacksonville Jaguars, Yahoo says 16. I think it was definitely a little bit more than that. So about 150 this week, but like I said, FC was able to get touchdowns up and down his roster, and even though he didn't start Matt Ryan, he had to start Teddy Bridgewater, who actually got him just over 45 points, and definitely it was enough with the Monday night trio to pull ahead and take this one down by 20, and FC moves up to 6-3 in third place, and like I mentioned, McCoy's homeboys, 2-7. He is not in last place. The Rook is in last, but both of you are 2-7, and thus the magic number 7 means you are all but looking forward to next year. Next up, we had the Springfield Isotopes going up against the Isotope Slayer, and unfortunately for the Slayer was the one being slayed instead of doing the slaying, as the Isotopes took this one down 151.65 to 145.45. No Matthew Stafford meant Carson Palmer went in this week for the Isotopes, got 43 points. Des Bryant almost pretty much on nothing from him all game until the very end, garbage time. He caught a touchdown. He got 2 passes and a touchdown right at the very end of the game to get me 9.5 points. 10 from Floyd, Malcolm Floyd. 78 yards and a touchdown from Jamal Charles. Unfortunately, Niall Davis didn't do too much. Seems like the Chiefs have been trying to give Niall Davis a lot of carries whenever they have a fourth quarter lead. Thought maybe that would happen again this week, but it did not pan out. The game, I guess, was a little bit closer than previous weeks, but fortunately it did not cost a win here. Jason Witten, 12 points, and the can't say enough good things about Antonio Brown. I know people are probably upset that he's on my team, but hey, he's a Steeler, so we got to root for him. The guy's just been incredible this year. 11 catches, 144 yards, and a touchdown from him in the flex. Baltimore defense, let's see, didn't do too much. Gave up a ton of points and a ton of yards. to the Steelers. Fortunately, we got Isotopes got a kick return touchdown from Jacoby Jones. Got tacked on 9 points for that. So, yeah, to give the Isotopes about 150 point total. This is what was in question going into Monday night. Strangely enough, if the Isotopes had used the New England Patriots defense at home against the Denver Broncos, which seemed like a matchup that you definitely want to avoid, that would they actually ended up doing pretty well and got about 33, 34 points over I think it was about 18 points from the Ravens defense. So that would have been almost another 20 points, 15 points that would have could have been crucial here. But fortunately, for the Isotopes, it was a pretty bad week all around for the Isotope Slayer, the Twerk and Bowl Cuts. I'm sorry. Why am I calling him by his actual team name here? The Twerk and Bowl Cuts. Only 23 points from Cam Newton. He looks all sorts of confused on Thursday night in that game. Greg Jennings and Dwayne Bowe, actually decent games from them. Too bad they couldn't get you a touchdown. This one, like I said, it was about a 15-point difference going into Monday night. Ruben Randall was the only player left to go. Unfortunately, he's only topped 15 points once this year, and that was like 16 and a half. He was only able to get you 4 for 49 this week. A lot of dropped passes his way. So, had to be disappointing if you watched that game. As for the rest of your team, not much from Brandon Oliver, not much from Jonathan Stewart. Jerry Maclin went off, though, again in the flex. Over 150 yards and 2 touchdowns from him. He's been on fire the past few weeks. Pretty much the entire season, I'd have to say. And fortunately for me, Julius Thomas had a quiet week. He did catch a touchdown, but he only had 2 catches in the game. Perhaps the scariest part of this matchup was the Seattle Seahawks defense at home going against the winless Oakland Raiders and Derek Carr. They did score a defensive touchdown, but they gave up a decent amount of, they gave up 24 points and a decent amount of yards. Hardly any yards rushing, though. I think you got 9 points for that. But Yahoo says 19 for Seattle. I believe it was actually more. It was actually more like 35, if I remember correctly, which made up for a lot of those low scores you got from your quarterback and your running backs. 0 from your kicker, and like I said, there's a couple of differences when it's a 6-point match. 6-point difference in your matchup is gonna really sting and come back to bite you, especially the 0 from your kicker and not much from your running backs. So, with that win, the Isotopes move up to 3-6, but stay in 10th place, and the Twerk and Bowl Cuts dropped to 4-5, one of many 4-5 teams, and he is actually now all the way down in 9th place. The final matchup was New Gods Mad Titans going up against You My Puddin'. Both quarterbacks faced off on Monday night. Fortunately for New Gods Mad Titans, he had a pretty significant lead going into this one and ended up taking it down 181.6 to 157.75. Like I said, battle of the quarterbacks on Monday night. Garbage time, Eli Manning tacked on some touchdowns, padded his passing yards. And let's see, Andrew Luck ended up with 62. And Eli, about 56 from him. Pretty high score from Eli. You're not going to see that all the time. Can't be too disappointed. but expected that game to be a shootout, and for the most part it was. Unfortunately, a lot of the Giants' points, fantasy-wise, it was a shootout, but a lot of the Giants' points, Eli's points, came in garbage time, like I said. Andrew Luck continues to just carry the Wolves. I know we were surprised watching the game, and the announcers were commenting on how the Colts just weren't running the ball. I think just barely into the third quarter, Andrew Luck had 34, 35 pass attempts already. He ended up with 25 completions, 4 touchdowns, 350 yards, 20 points from Demaryius Thomas. Sanu, even though A.J. Green was back, 95 yards and a touchdown for him. Man, Colts and Bengals, I don't know what it is about these couple teams for the Wolves, or the new gods, Mad Titans, but no Giovanni Bernard, no problem, thanks to Kevin Bean, trading him Jeremy Hill. 150 yards and 2 touchdowns for him. Balances out the little to nothing from Zach Ertz and Taliaferro. Bobby Rainey, actually in the flex, managed to get you 13 points. Eagles D won the game. Not too much from them, but with those couple big scores. No Forte this week, but like I said, Jeremy Hill and Sanu from the Bengals. Just fortunate you got them as the matchup against the Jaguars, which is going to favor your Cincinnati players pretty every time. And Andrew Luck and Demaryius Thomas, those couple guys, really carried his team. Puddin, he actually had a couple people on Monday night. He had Eli Manning. He had Andre Williams, who did punch in a touchdown. Unfortunately, you also had Eli Manning going up against your Indianapolis Colts defense. Gave up a lot of points. They had 1 turnover, a couple sacks, but as Eli was getting those yards at the end, that was bringing your point total down for your defense. You got the win, but wasn't too much from them. Not really something you want to do if you can avoid it. But as for the rest of your team, let's see. Actually, another pretty good game from DeAndre Hopkins. Is that his name, DeAndre? DeAndrew? I don't know. 115 yards and a touchdown from him. A.J. Green, not much receiving, but he did get a touchdown. Frank Gore, 5 points from him. Quiet game from Antonio Gates. As we know, the San Diego Chargers completely tanked, thanks to Philip Rivers. 6 points from him. And Andre Ellington in the flex. Pretty good score from him, about 24 points. 95 yards, had a receiving touchdown. A couple catches. But 157, not quite enough to get it done. Maybe if you had been able to use a different defense against your quarterback, that might have made a difference. Again, the quiet game from Antonio Gates and Frank Gore. I think Frank Gore usually plays pretty well against the St. Louis Rams. Unfortunately, that did not pan out for you this week. And once again, New Gods Mad Titans pulls out another victory. Moves him up, stays in first place. He's now 8-1, pulling away from the pack. You do have Tree Size hot on your tail, and I believe you guys both play each other this week, so that should be an interesting one. And as for Puddin, he falls down to 4-5. He's in 8th place in that jumbled mess that is the 4 and 5 teams. So that's pretty much it for week 9 in the books. It doesn't feel like we're this far along into the season. It's gone really quick. Only four games left in the regular season. Excuse me. Like I said already, if you are McCoy's homeboys or the Rook, you pretty much got to pack it in and start getting ready. Looking forward to 2015. Make a better attempt. I'm still surprised. I still think that McCoy's homeboys, if you look at his draft results, how he ends up in this position already at this point in the season, 2-7. You got, came out of the first two rounds with two top-tier running backs. Arian Foster always has injury scares, but he's been outstanding this year. So yeah, McCoy and Foster. You got Romo as your quarterback. Brandon Marshall, always scary. Somehow he's been having an off year. Just nothing you can really do about that. Roddy White, always dependable. Percy Harvin, maybe he's gonna turn it around. He had 11 catches this week. Maybe it might be too little, too late. But and Bengals defense, you got some good. Olsen is one of the top tight ends behind Graham and Gronk in terms of production this year. So the players are there. Just you haven't gotten the production. 1 week of bad luck, and really don't know what to tell you. That's just the way it goes. I assure you that I know exactly how you feel. Although I'm not eliminated yet, I am on the cusp, and my schedule coming up is not good, not favorable to me making a crazy run to the playoffs. Which I would have to say, if the Isotopes can squeak into the playoffs, the only way it can happen is to win out my schedule and end up 7-6. And well, even though 7-6 wasn't good enough for Bohoric last year, but considering the Isotopes were 1-6, if we could end up making the playoffs, even that would be a borderline historic accomplishment. Not to toot my own horn, but it would. You gotta admit that would at least be fairly impressive. But I'm not gonna pretend like I'm expecting that to happen. I got some tough matchups down the road. Anyway, and this being week 9, there's only a couple teams left in the knockout pool, and this week the only teams left were New Gods Mad Titans, the Demise Hooligans, who both scored in the 180s, and the other two teams were the Springfield Isotopes and the Twerk and Bowl Cuts, who as we know, they played each other, and so the winner of that matchup was able to survive, and fortunately for me, it was the Springfield Isotopes, and this week we say goodbye to Josh, the Twerk and Bowl Cuts, the Isotope Slayers, the Yuma Yogurt, now the Nick Foley and Clavicle. I've already forgotten some of his previous names, but yep. The only survivors in the pool, here we go, last 3, the Isotopes, the Demise Hooligans, and New Gods Mad Titans. So good luck to those last 3 teams remaining, and let's see, like I mentioned, Jimmy's up at the top. He's got Tree Size on his tail. Those two teams play each other this week coming up. That should be an interesting matchup to see. I think, though, we'll see how New Gods Mad Titans can manage without Andrew Luck. As for, let's see, what other matchups. But that matchup doesn't really... That matchup, this one comes at a good time, I think, for everybody else. These two teams, Jimmy and Tree, playing each other. It doesn't really matter at this point who wins that one. Even If Tree loses, that would knock him down to 7-3. He'd have probably some other people on his tail, and that would move Jimmy up to 9-1, pretty much giving him the best chance to finish first for the regular season. But as for the teams in the middle, pretty much everything from Dub C on down to the Isotopes, it really, at this point in the season, Jimmy and Tree might as well just keep on winning, because those wins are probably going to come against teams who are fighting for playoff spots, and so that they play each other this week, but those next couple of games could be crucial. We've got a lot of people playing each other this week who need wins. For example, let's see. We got Nick Folian going up against the Twerkin Bowl Cuts. We got the Detonators. We got a Battle of the Podcast. We got Detonators and Huber Slayers going against each other. Dub C going against McCoy. That could be it, Season's not over for McCoy. You can still try and be a spoiler for other teams here. FT Dvorak going up against the Rook. Doesn't look good for the Rook on paper, but hey, who knows? Anything can happen. And the Isotopes going up against Puddin. Both teams need to win that one. The Isotopes, as we know, they lose one more game, they're pretty much toast. As for Puddin, he doesn't want to fall to 4-6. So yeah, big matchups up and down the board here this week. Everybody needs to get a win, but unfortunately, only half of us can get a win. So, looking forward to the podcast, looking forward to this week, and looking forward to seeing what the podcasters have to say. As I mentioned, they are going up against each other this week. So, that's pretty much it. It's good to be back. Thank you for keeping the seat warm for me. And, good luck to everybody this week coming up. See you next week.